anyone who listens to me knows that I hate politically correct language. I made a point on Twitter last week that I was at Sydney Airport and there was an announcement for passengers to go to the gate to board a flight, and they did use the term ladies and gentlemen, which I thought had been banned. I thought that the language police had outlawed ladies and gentlemen, but apparently not. We're going to talk in a moment to a man from Canada who's visiting here in Australia at the moment. He's written a really best-selling book, topped the New York Times bestseller list this year, 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. That's Professor Jordan Peterson, who first started on this journey of his when he's Canadian, as I said, and he was told that he shouldn't use gender-specific language. Now, the Canadians clearly gone nuts. They have a law that mandates the use of gender-neutral pronouns such as ze and zer instead of he and she. Seriously, that can't be true, can it? I wouldn't have thought it was true until I saw, you might recall, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister. He must be the most politically correct leader in the world of Canada. He was addressing, I think it was an audience of voters, and an unidentified audience member stood up and complimented the Canadian leader for recognising the ability and power that women actually possess. Maternal love's love, blah, blah, blah. And Trudeau stood up and said, hang on, we don't use the word mankind, which the audience member had used. We actually like to say people kind. I hope he was joking. The professor joins us on the line. Jordan Peterson, good morning to you.
Good morning.
He must have been kidding, wasn't he?
No.
No?
No, and his new budget is completely focused on equity.
I mean,
and
how...
That's the problem he thinks he needs to solve in Canada. That's the limit of his imagination, is to construct an entire federal budget to solve a problem that no one cares about, that doesn't exist.
Well, I think this country's rapidly charging down the same road. I know you've not been in the country for very long, but you're here at a sold-out speaking tour. We've had the Gender and Language Police in the last week, the Diversity Council of all things, suggesting that airline staff can't use the words sir and madam. I had to say, Jordan, I was very happy when the next day I got on a flight and the flight attendant said, watch out for your arm, Dahl, because I'm going to bang into it with a trolley. So sensible people are not taking any notice of this stuff, are they?
Yeah, but they will. You guys are on the same road that we're on in Canada, and it's worse than you think. So be prepared, because it's coming.
So tell me about the book. What motivated you to write 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, and what does the book tell us?
Well, I'm trying to outline an alternative, I wouldn't say political path exactly, I would say an ethical path. You know, we're on this journey in the West into identity politics, which is a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing on the left to re-divide us into tribal groups and to set us against one another, you know, all in the name of oppression and victimization, or on the right to set us against one another in the name of nationalism and ethnic pride. You know, the identity politics game is tribalism, and playing that game is murderous, and it's as simple as that. And I've been trying to outline an alternative, and it's a classic Western alternative, I would say, a classic Western liberal alternative, even in the old school sense. And I've been lecturing online and writing in this book as well about the idea that the best way forward is for people to straighten up and to adopt responsibility and to try to put their lives in order and to be very careful with their speech and to say what they mean and to act forthrightly, and so that we can return to our individual predicated society and try to negotiate between the two shoals of this political polarization process. And so the book is a series of stories and arguments to flesh out that idea, that meaning in life, which is the antidote, the real antidote to chaos, I would say, is to be found in the adoption of responsibility and the willingness to struggle forward, regardless of your suffering, regardless of your victimization status, let's say. So,
well, I feel like I'm a victim. I'm an old white male. We seem to be the main targets.
Yeah, well, that's going to get worse before it gets better. So,
can't get much worse, can it?
Oh, yes.
Is it going to get worse?
Things can always get worse. There's no bottom to worse. So, yeah, well, I mean, these things are so foolish. I know your airline, Qantas, and this is something it's absolutely remarkable to behold, in my estimation, is to see these corporations, which are obviously beneficiaries of the free West free market system, allowing the radical leftists into their ranks to determine the linguistic territory that they're going to inhabit. And I don't know what corporate leaders are thinking. Why in the world would you let in a radical leftist fifth column in the midst of your company? How is that going to be a good idea?
But what I find in that is that the workforce themselves are sensible enough to ignore this.
Yeah, well, that's not going to be the case for long, because what you'll see is that people who ignore it will be called out by the radicals who support it, and they will become increasingly cowed and afraid to use their normative language.
Is this only happening in the West?
Yes, I would say so. I would say, as far as I can tell, that it's a Western phenomenon.
It doesn't seem to be happening in Asian countries, for example. It seems to be particularly bad in places like the UK, Canada, the United States and Australia. I spoke yesterday about a Mother's Day card. You won't believe this, Professor. In the UK, being sold at the giant Waitrose supermarket chain. Mother's Day cards that don't say Happy Mother's Day, it says Happy You Day.
That really, you'd be amazed at what doesn't surprise me anymore. I mean, people send me things all the time outlining the next idiotic step in the politically correct march, and every single thing is jaw-dropping. And it's like a contest in stupidity. And as soon as you think you've seen as far as it can go, someone pops up with something like you just described to show you that no, it can still get more foolish.
You say stand up, grow up, be tough against this. That's not easy often to do. I mean, if you're in a workforce where you have this movement in your midst, they're going to, as you say, call you out. So what is your advice to people who just hate political correctness and hate the way this is going, hate the fact that our institutions are being marched over? Well,
you've got a choice. You can either do something about it now and pay the price. And I'm not suggesting that lightly, believe me. I'm really not.
Or have you paid the price?
Well, I would say yes and no. For about 3 months after I made the initial videos and put them on YouTube that were protesting, let's say, Bill C-16, which is the compelled speech bill in Canada, my job was in danger. Like, the university sent me 2 warning letters. They basically said that they were afraid that what I was doing was illegal and that they were going to be held responsible for it. And they had every reason to be worried about that, because the legislation was written in such a way that even criticizing the legislation was of dubious legality. And so the university thankfully wrote 2 letters, telling me to stop, which were basically warning letters. And, of course, that buttressed my point. And then I was very concerned that I would lose my professional licensing as a clinical psychologist because I'd get mobbed. And so that was very stressful for a good long time. I mean, I'm not complaining about any of this, because as well as the pressure that's come along with being at the epicenter of successive political storms in Canada, I've got a tremendous amount of public support, like an overwhelming amount of public support. So I would say it's been really bad and really good.
Yeah, we recently had in this country Milos Yiannopoulos on a lecture tour, and it got very ugly outside. I hope you've managed to avoid those sorts of protests, have you?
Yeah, well, I've avoided them in Australia. I just posted a YouTube video of my last talk at Queen's University, which was about a week ago, and it was ugly. There was a protest there, and it was the ugliest thing that I've been involved in. It was really creepy. We were in a hall that was kind of like a church that had stained glass windows down the side. Now, there's about 900 people in the hall, and the barbarians outside, the protesters, jumped up on the stained glass windows and pounded on them for an hour and a half steadily. They barricaded the doors. So it was like, and inside the hall, you could see shadowy figures up against the stained glass pounding away. It was like being in a zombie apocalypse. And some protester got arrested and was carrying a garrote. It was really ugly.
That is
creepy.
ugly. I hope it doesn't.
It was creepy, man.
It won't happen to you here. Let's hope, but we better shut up until.
No, it's been very good. People have been very welcoming here, and the journalists as well, I would say.
Well, very nice. Thanks for joining us this morning. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks very much.
Jordan Peterson there. That book is 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, published by Penguin Random House. Look it up online. Also look up online the lecture tours, although I am told they're sold out.